Welcome back to CIA Declassified. We've tracked guerrilla armies through the heat shimmer of Jordan in Operation Amen earlier today, but next we look at an operation where the battlefield was the vacuum above our heads. In 1958, the world was obsessed with the Sputnik crisis, but while the public looked at satellites, the agency and the Department of Defense were looking at something far more dangerous: the Christophilos effect. They wanted to know if they could wrap the Earth in a cloak of lethal electrons. This was the most secret experiment in the history of the atmosphere. This was Project ARGUS. To control the world, the agency first had to understand how to break its magnetic heart. Project ARGUS consisted of 3 secret high-altitude nuclear detonations in the South Atlantic Ocean to test the theory that a nuclear burst could create an artificial radiation belt around the Earth. A quote from a declassified 1959 task force report: "The experiment was the first time that a global geophysical phenomenon had ever been produced by man-made means." End quote. The agency utilized a task force of 9 ships and over 4,500 personnel to launch X-17A missiles from the USS Norton Sound. The declassified archives reveal that the Langley magnetometer was the only instrument sensitive enough to track the drift of the electron shell as it moved from the South Pole to the North. A quote from Dr. Nicholas Christophilos: "We are not just exploding a bomb, we are injecting the magnetic sphere with a tracer to see how the world breathes." End quote. The detonations created man-made auroras that were visible as far away as the Azores, confusing commercial pilots who thought the sun was suddenly rising in the wrong direction. The declassified release confirms the agency used Langley ionospheric sounders to determine that the explosions had successfully blacked out radio communications across half the planet for several hours. Project ARGUS proved that high-altitude nuclear bursts could induce satellite blindness, burning out the sensitive electronics of any craft passing through the newly created radiation shell. The declassified archives show that the agency secretly deployed Langley ground stations to monitor the impact of the radiation on long-range telegraph cables. A quote from a 1958 top-secret briefing for President Eisenhower: If the Soviets launch a mass ICBM attack, an Argus-style burst could potentially disable their guidance systems before they re-enter the atmosphere." End quote. Technological breakthroughs included the Langley gamma ray detector, which was later adapted for use in the first generation of spy satellites to detect Soviet nuclear tests from space. The declassified logs reveal Project Nightlight, a sub-operation where the agency monitored the migratory patterns of birds to see if the artificial magnetic shift caused by the bombs would lead them astray. Under ARGUS, the CIA successfully tested Langley shielding, a specialized lead-infused paint designed to protect agency aircraft from the electromagnetic pulse of a high-altitude burst. The declassified release highlights the Langley weather link, where scientists investigated if the ionization of the upper atmosphere could be used to steer hurricanes toward enemy territory. The records show that the agency utilized Langley depth charges to clear the South Atlantic waters of Soviet spy trawlers before the missiles were launched. The operation successfully mapped the Van Allen belts with greater precision than any previous civilian mission, identifying the specific magnetic bottle that holds particles in place. A quote from a declassified 1960 CIA Scientific Intelligence Digest: "The Argus data confirms that the Earth's magnetic field can be used as a weapon of mass communication disruption." End quote. The declassified archives confirm that Project ARGUS was the primary justification for the creation of the Space Command precursor, as the agency realized space was no longer a neutral sanctuary. Operational breakthroughs included the Langley Rapid Launch System, which allowed a ship to fire a nuclear-tipped missile while rolling in heavy seas. The records reveal that the agency accidentally created a hotspot, a pocket of trapped radiation that remained in orbit for over 2 years, damaging 3 early weather satellites. Project Argus researchers discovered the whistlers, strange radio noises caused by lightning strikes that were amplified by the artificial radiation belt. According to the files, the agency used a decoy ship to broadcast fake launch coordinates to confuse Soviet submarines stalking the task force. A quote from Dr. James Van Allen: "We have discovered that the Earth is not surrounded by a void, but by a vibrant, reactive shield that we can now manipulate at will." End quote. The logs show that the agency tested communication methods that use the artificial belt as a mirror to bounce signals over the horizon without the need for traditional towers. The operation confirmed that a high-altitude burst creates an EMP that can travel thousands of miles through the atmosphere, leading to the hardening of the U.S. power grid. The release reveals that the agency launched a fleet of specialized microprobes immediately following the second blast, which collected samples of ionized air to determine if the explosion had permanently altered the oxygen to nitrogen ratio. A quote from a 1961 internal evaluation: "The Argus results suggest that a coordinated series of bursts could render the entire inner solar system opaque to a conventional radar for a period of weeks." End quote. The archives show that the agency successfully simulated an ion storm in the laboratory, proving that the radioactive belt could be used to fry the guidance computers of any incoming Soviet missiles. Project Argus researchers discovered that the artificial belt emitted a unique hum that could be heard by shortwave radio operators as far away as Australia, leading to an immediate agency effort to jam those frequencies. According to the logs, the agency used the Argus data to develop lead glass cockpit windows for the U-2 spy plane, protecting pilots from the intense cosmic rays amplified by the blast. While the missile trajectories are declassified, there are plenty of redactions in these files. What was the agency locking in or out of the atmosphere? Get ready for the theory of the shell project. Speculation suggests the agency didn't just test radiation. They built a plasma shield around the world to stop alien signals from reaching the surface. The rumor is that the detonations were a desperate attempt to retune the Earth's frequency to prevent an extraterrestrial broadcast from mind-controlling the human race. The redactions hide the planetary cage logs and the transcripts of the signals that the shield was meant to block. What if Project Argus was actually an interstellar beacon? A dark rumor suggests the agency was trying to signal a shadow fleet in the outer solar system. According to this theory, the detonations were a high-energy handshake, and the redactions hide the deep space reply reports, evidence that something out there answered the explosion with a signal of its own. Did we punch a hole? Gossip suggests the redactions hide Project Leak, where the bombs accidentally tore a permanent gap in the magnetosphere and the black ink masked the atmospheric draining rates. The sky mirror theory posits that the redactions hide a plan to use the radiation belt to project a fake invasion into the sky to unite the world under a single movement, with the black bars masking the holographic projection coordinates. Was the radiation used for global hypnosis? Whispers claim the redactions hide Project Lullaby, where the agency tested if the electron shell could broadcast low-frequency waves to induce sleep in entire nations, and the black ink hides the mass sedation success rates. The moon base rumor suggests Argus was actually a defensive screen to hide a secret agency launch to the lunar surface, with the black bars masking the secret astronaut manifest. Did the bombs kill the sun? Some believe the redactions hide Operation Dim, where the agency accidentally altered the way sunlight reaches the Earth, and the black ink covers the global cooling contingency plans. The angelic static theory claims the redactions prove the explosions destroyed a spiritual layer of the sky, and the black bars hide the soul capture logs recorded by Langley-based sensors. Some whisper that the redactions hide the fact that the radiation belt is actually alive and the explosions were an attempt to feed a gargantuan spacefaring organism, with the black ink masking the feeding schedule. Looking at the documents, the most significant redactions appear in the Environmental Impact Summary, document number ARG-58-B, where entire pages regarding the long-term atmospheric decay are missing. Some theorize these bars hide evidence that ARGUS permanently weakened the ozone layer in the southern hemisphere, a fact the agency buried to avoid international environmental trials. The psychological observation logs from the task force contain heavy redactions regarding unexplained visual phenomenon reported by crew members. Amateur theorists argue these blacked out sections describe mass sightings of craft that appeared to be feeding on the radiation, suggesting the bombs were actually a dinner bell for entities living in the upper atmosphere. Within the communications intercept files, there is a reoccurring redaction labeled secondary harmonic source. This has led to speculation that the nuclear burst inadvertently opened a frequency that allowed the CIA to listen to transmissions from a parallel Earth, and the black ink protects the transcripts of a world where the Cold War ended in 1945. The Orbital Debris Tracking Report has significant redactions under the heading Anomalous Capture. This fuels the rumor that the artificial belt trapped an ancient direct alien satellite, and the redactions cover the agency's failed attempts to retrieve it using the Norton Sounds cranes. The Project Argus Final Strategic Value Memo is almost entirely redacted, specifically the section on civilian applications. Speculators believe this hides a plan to use high-altitude bursts to lobotomize the satellite networks of any nation that refuses to join a global banking system, keeping the world in a perpetual digital dark age. Was Project Argus a success? Tactically, it was a frighteningly efficient success. The agency proved that the very environment of the planet could be modified to serve as a defensive or offensive tool. Strategically, it was a gamble with the survival of the species. While it gave the U.S. a massive edge in EMP technology, it led to the Outer Space Treaty because the world realized that if we kept testing the sky, we might eventually lose it. The agency mastered the fire, but they almost burned the house down. As far as technological and operational breakthroughs go, the Sky on Fire forged the future of space warfare. Global geophysical warfare, the first proof that human technology could alter the planet's magnetic environment. Artificial ionization, mastering the creation of man-made plasma to block enemy communications. Radiation-hardened electronics, the development of the Langley standard for building satellites that can survive nuclear environments, and satellite vulnerability assessment, establishing the exact radiation threshold that kill modern technology. Project Argus shows us that the agency doesn't just watch the world, they edit it. As the Declassified files reveal, the halos we created in 1958 are the reason we have a Space Force today. Thanks for listening, and join us next time as we examine Operation Taxman. The agency undertook a high-risk mission to plant electronic ears in the treacherous mountains of China to monitor Soviet missile telemetry. We'll uncover the high-altitude insertion, we'll look at the hidden sensors, the secret alliances, and the moment the agency realized that the best place to hear a secret is from the peak of a mountain. Join us next time for The Dragon's Ear. In the meantime, I'll see you in the archives.